So, good afternoon everybody. आज हम लोग we'll go through our first chapter or the first concept, that is your monetary policy. We'll study that, and after that, you'll be able to answer most of the questions from this chapter in your prelims or UPSC exams. So before starting monetary policy, I'll come to monetary policy later on, but first our focus would be on to understand what is inflation, because that forms a very basic part of your monetary policy. Until unless you don't understand what is inflation or what is deflation, you won't be able to understand how the monetary policy actually works. So before starting monetary policy, we have prepared a small PDF here where I've explained you in very layman terms what is monetary policy, what is inflation basically. So as you can see here, I've written it down. Inflation is nothing but increase in general price level and fall in purchasing power. तो ये दो concepts या दो terms are very important when I'm talking about what is monetary what is inflation. So आप जैसे कि देख पा रहे हैं, increase in general price level to and fall in purchasing power. तो ये दो चीजों के बारे में हम लोग को ध्यान रखना है जब हम लोग inflation की बात करें. So when I'm talking about this, I've given you an example here of a boy called Shyam. So what happened is, on 5th June 2022, Shyam's mother asked him to go to the shop and get 5 kg of rice, for which she gave him 100 rupees note. She said कि जाओ Shyam 5 किलो चावल लेकर आओ, घर में आज चावल नहीं है. So what happened with this? On 5th June, Shyam took that 100 rupees and went to the shopkeeper and gave the shopkeeper, and in return what happened? That shopkeeper gave him 5 kg of rice. So what you can understand from this concept is that when Shyam gave 100 rupees to the shopkeeper, उसको 5 kg rice मिला. That means per kg rice cost around 20 rupees per kg. Now when we move on to our next thing, suppose next day 5th June को गया, वो राइस खत्म हो गया. अब उसकी मदर ने she sent her again on 10th July 2022. So almost after a year, yeah, almost after a month, the 5 kg of rice was over. Now she said, okay, we want another 5 kg of rice. So on 10th July he went and he again gave the shopkeeper 100 rupees, but this time the shopkeeper gave him only 4 kg of rice. So what do you understand by this concept? When I'm talking about this thing, you can understand that पहले जब वो 100 रुपए दे रहा था, he was getting 5 kg of rice, but now when he's giving the same 100 rupees, he's getting only 4 kg of rice. That means what happened is, first phenomena, that is price of the rice has increased by rupees 5. First thing. Next what happened is the purchasing power of the money, जिससे वो पहले 5 kg of rice खरीद पा रहा था, that has fallen down. And in this situation we call it as inflation. I hope you are clear with this. Inflation का एकदम basic layman language में, if I want to explain you, it's nothing but increase in price level along with fall in purchasing power. Purchasing power of what? Purchasing power of your money. Now, as you can see here, I'll just rub it off. As you can see here, I've given you, I've written it down bad, because why inflation is bad. So as you can see here, bad because it erodes the real income. तो जो आपकी actual value of price है, जो आपका actual value of money है, उसकी power erode हो जा रही है. Erode कैसे? पहली बात तो आपको quantity कम मिल रही है, and secondly आपको ज़्यादा pay करना पड़ रहा है वही पुरानी वाली quantity खरीदने के लिए. Now अगर same example, अगर if again Shyam wants to buy 5 kg of rice only instead of 4, he has to pay 125, or her mother has to give him 125 rupees, then only he can buy 5 kg of rice. So that is a basic example of inflation. Now next thing you can see here is that there are so many goods and quantities in our economy, starting from automobiles, textiles, shoes, so many things, mobile phones, electronics, likewise. So how that is practically possible to calculate the inflation? So to calculate the inflation, there are two indices, or there are two scales available at the disposal of the government, so that they can, calculate this inflation. What are those two indices, or what are those two indexes you can see here is that first is your wholesale price index and second is your consumer price index. Now I'll just talk to you brief about this, because this not forms the part of your monetary policy, because when we come down to this part, I'll explain you what is this again. But as of now, this also becomes important for your exam, because directly बहुत बार आपको questions आएंगे UPSC में, for example कि प्रीलिम्स में एक क्वेश्चन आया था दैट WPI के बारे में. So this becomes important. तो 2-3 चीजें इसके बारे में जाननी है. We'll keep that it for later round. But now let's focus on what are the causes of inflation, because that forms an important part of your monetary policy. So just एक बार brief, I'll go take you through this. So indices for measuring inflation. First WPI, that is wholesale price index, and it is published by economic advisor, which comes under Ministry of Finance. ये एक important fact आपको याद रखना है. And second is your consumer price index, which is published by Central Statistical Organization and Labor Bureau, which comes under Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. So ये दो indices हैं. ये करते क्या है basically? ये क्या calculate करते हैं? Average change in price कितना हुआ है from a certain point to आज के दिन में. तो उसके लिए जैसे कि मैंने आपको ये वाला example, I've given you this example of Shyam, where Shyam is a boy who went to the shop and bought on 5th June and 10th July, and he can see the changes in price क्योंकि price of the rice has increased. So एक base year मान के we have increased the price. We have kept a base year, and after doing that we have increased the price. So similarly, when we are using these two indices, there is also base year. So when I'm talking to you about the base year, just I'll show it to you. Yeah, so I've written it down here. As you can see, the base year for WPI is 2011-12. तो हम लोग 2011-12 में what were the prices of the goods and commodities in the wholesale price index? We use the base year 2011-12, and consumer price index के लिए we use 2012. Okay, anyway, we'll come to this later on. Next is your headline and core inflation. For the timing, we'll skip this because this is again, it's a part of your these indices, some factual thing. We'll not focus on that now. We'll be focusing on some of the conceptual things. So let's move ahead from here. Now this becomes important, causes of inflation. When I'm talking about causes of inflation, why inflation happens in the first case? So there are 3 reasons that leads to inflation in the economy. What are those 3 reasons? What are the 3 reasons? As you can see here, I pointed it down. So first is your demand pull inflation, second is your cost push inflation, and third is your structural bottlenecks. I'll explain you each of them one by one, but let's focus on these 3 things first. So demand pull inflation, there are 3 reasons for demand pull inflation: rise in income and population, black money, and excessive government expenditure. Now, first focusing on your demand pull inflation. Now what happens in a demand pull inflation is that the aggregate demand for a particular commodity is greater than aggregate supply. Now what is aggregate demand and aggregate supply? Say for example, I'll give you an example again here. Suppose, let's take the first case, that is rise in income. So again I said, say 2010 mein, there are 100 people in a company and their income was rupees 150. Now what happened over the period of 5 years, what happened, say in 2015, same these 100 people, now their income rose to say 300 rupees. Now what you can see here is that previously the price was 150 and now it has been increased to 300. So basically with these 150 rupees, these 100 people were able to buy a certain basket of goods, say for example clothes, electronics, house rent, education. But now because there is an increase in income, we can see that their basket of good has also increased. Now they'll be able to buy better quality of electronics. Now they'll be able to buy better quality of clothes. Now they'll be able to buy better quality of housing, or they'll shift to a better house, or they'll be able to focus on better quality of education. So what we can see here is that when I'm talking about demand pull inflation, because there is rise in income, what happened? The demand for particular commodities have increased. How it has increased? Previously these people were demanding limited amount of goods. Now because their income, their purchasing power or their ability to spend more has increased, they'll be able to get more commodities. What happens because of this is, because of aggregate demand increase, there is an increase in aggregate demand. What happens is, the reason first that I gave you, rise in income. So rise in income results in क्या होता है इससे, that your money supply or the money held by public is increased. Basically what I'm trying to say, when there's a rise in income, the money supply held by them, the liquid currency held by them increases. When the money supply increases in the economy, or when the money supply with these people increases, what happens is their demand for commodities increase. As you can see, I told you previously their basket of goods and commodities were small, and now the basket of goods and commodities have increased. So you can see here is that rise in income led to increase in money supply with them, and now the demand has increased. Now why? As a result, demand would increase. What will happen? Now previously 100 people with 150 rupees, they are demanding a certain quantity of goods. Now they have increase in they have an increase in their income. Now these same 100 people want more and more quantity of those goods. Suppose again, if I want to give an example, say take an example of phone. Let's say iPhone. In these 100 rupees, in these 100 people, previously 50 people were demanding an iPhone. But now because there is an increase in income of all these 100 people, what happened was, now out of these 100 people, 80 people are demanding that iPhones. So what is the end result? When more and more people are demanding a particular commodity, what will happen? From the producer's point of view, what will do? The price, when there is higher demand, the price of the commodity would increase. And as the price of the particular commodity increases, what will happen? It leads to inflation in the economy. Inflation in the economy. So rise in income hua, and what happened? Money supply उनके पास बढ़ गया. Money supply means their personal disposable income, जो वो dispose कर सकते हैं. Personal disposable income has increased, and when this income has increased, what happened was demand for particular commodity has increased, say iPhone, and now the demand, more and more people are demanding that iPhone. So the producer of the iPhone decided to increase the price, and as a result, what happened? It led to inflation in the economy. So as you can see, there is inflation in the economy. Now there is another fact, another thing that I want to tell you here is that, I'll write it, I'll just go say that. Okay, I'll just try to rub it off. Now because there is an increase, there is an inflation in the economy, there is a rise in price. Now understand from the producer's point of view, who's producing that mobile phone. So what will happen is, first of all, when there is more and more demand for the mobile phone, what will the producer do? See, we are the consumer, we are talking about the inflation from the consumer point of view. But when we are a producer, when I'm talking about the inflation from his point of view, what he will do when he increase the price? What is the reason for increase in price? First of all, we have to understand that reason and increase in price. Why? Because first is he wants to maximize his profit. He wants to maximize his profit, and secondly, वो जब price बढ़ाता है, what he does with this additional amount that he is getting, in order to meet the increase in aggregate demand, because there is rise in aggregate demand ज़्यादा है compared to aggregate supply, in order to meet this demand, what he do with this extra money, he invests this money in what? He invests this money in 4 factors of production. What are the 4 factors of production? What are the 4 factors of production? 4 factors of production are, I'll rub this off. What are the 4 factors of production? Land, labor, capital and enterprise. So I hope this is clear. Land, labor, capital and enterprise are the 4 factors of production. So what happens is, you have to remember this thing, that labor, land, capital and enterprise. So when I'm talking about these 4 factors of production, you have to always remember that these 3 factors of the 4 factors of production are a fixed factor. What do you mean by fixed factors? When I'm talking about fixed factors, what I'm trying to say that you cannot, in a short period of time, you cannot decrease their size or increase their size. They take a long duration of time for their increment basically. But when I'm talking about labor, it is a variable factor. Variable factor. When I'm talking about labor, it's a variable factor. What do I understand by this? Whenever there is a crunch or whenever there is any kind of situation which is not good for the economy, you have always seen that the laborers are the first people who are unemployed or chucked out from the job. Chucked out from the job. So what I'm trying to say here is that when there is aggregate demand increase as compared to aggregate supply, जब aggregate demand आपका ज़्यादा होता है as compared to aggregate supply, why? Because there is a demand pull inflation. It leads to increase in employment level. Why? Now, in order to meet the rising demand from the people for a particular commodity, what this person will do, what the producer will do, he will employ more and more people in his factory so that he will be able to meet the demand of the people for that particular iPhone. Not even labor, he will also increase the size of his land, अपना production area बढ़ा लेगा वो. He will also increase the size of his capital. He'll buy more machineries. And thirdly, what he'll do, he will try to keep more people so that his production is increased in a better way. Profit maximization जिसकी बात करते हैं. So क्या हो रहा है? Aggregate demand is increased as compared to aggregate supply. What happened was it leads to increase in employment level. Same goes for the example of, so I told you about rise in income. So let's assume rise in population. So I gave you an example here of 100 people, their income. Okay, I'll just rub it off. So this is the example. So 4 factors of production, sorry, not 4 factors of production, I'll come to this. So yeah, 2010, 100 people were there. Now when we are talking about rise in population, we take this example that in the year 2000, there were around 100 people, and now in 2020, say there are around, so these are 100 people, now there are 10,000 people in a country. So what happened was, overall what happened, previously 100 people, to meet the demand of 100 people, a certain basket of goods and commodities were required. But now because there is rise in population, what happened, a bigger basket of that good and commodity is required. And as a result, what happens is, there is again, aggregate demand in this case, in the year 2020 is higher as compared to aggregate supply. And as a result, the same phenomena what we spoke about when we are talking about rise in income, that same phenomena repeats. That is, the producer will try to maximize his profit. Along with that, he will invest the extra money in the, in the 4 factors of production to increase the output. And as a result, when there is rise in income, as you can see here, a rise in population, it leads to increase in population. Same goes for your black money. When some people have more and more money with them in the terms of unaccounted or black money, which is not legalized currency, they'll be able to spend more. Their spending power will increase, and as a result, when their spending power increases, they started demanding they started demanding more and more of a particular commodity, and finally what happens, the demand for that the price of the particular commodity goes up. So these 3 examples, when I'm talking about rise in income, black money and excessive government expenditure, it leads to increase in employment level. Always remember that. And this is a good sign for the economy. Now next, when we come down to cost push inflation, as you can see here, when I'm talking about cost push inflation, now in this case, I'll just rub it off. Now in this case, what will happen is, when I'm talking about cost push inflation, in this case, aggregate supply is greater than aggregate demand. And when the aggregate supply is greater than demand, what I'm trying to say here is that from the producer's point of view, he's producing more and more of commodities, but the demand for that particular commodity is not there. Why? If I give you an example of such situation, say COVID-19, or maybe, 2008 economic recession that happened. Economic recession that happened. Okay, in this, I'm not talking about recession here, I'm just giving you an example. Ki what happens in cost push inflation? Cost push inflation, basically what is happening, the supply, from the supply side, the producer is producing more of a good and commodity, but the demand for that particular commodity is very less. Why? Because there are three reasons again: wage push, profit push, and raw material push. And now I'm going to explain why these three type of inflation is not good for the economy, because it leads to increase in unemployment level. How? Because what happens is, as I told you about the four factors of production, land, labor, land, capital, and enterprise. As I told you, these are fixed factor, and these things takes long term. These things take long time to increase or decrease. But labor being a variable factor, what happens is, suppose in the wage push inflation, suppose there are a group of laborers who want to increase their salary. They go to the owner of the factory and tell them, sir, ki kindly increase our salary. But the owner of the factory knows this very well, that if he increases the wages of this laborers, what will happen? It will impact the overall price of the product. Overall price of product बढ़ जाएगा. And as a result, what will happen? The demand for product will go down. Basic law of demand, that as the price go up, demand falls down. So he knows this thing very well. But at the same time, these people are also protesting. We want our income to be increased. So when I'm talking about this thing, in this phenomena, what happens is, what he will do, he will say, okay, I'll increase your employment, I'll increase your wages, but at the same time, suppose there were 10 workers in the factory working, now I'll be only keeping 7 of them. So, why? Because first, what will happen in this scenario, when he decreases the number of employees in his economy, in his factory, he can increase the wages without fluctuating the, without touching the overall price of the product. तो ओवरऑल प्राइस तो उतना ही था जितना पहले था, बट अब उसके बाकी कॉस्ट को कम करने के लिए he will try to decrease the labor. He won't be decreasing the size of the land or size of the machinery that he has. So what happened was, in wage push inflation, again he wanted to increase the price. So what he did was, he decreased the laborer. So as a result, due to cost push inflation, what happened was, there is increase in unemployment level. Same goes for profit. Now he wants to increase his profit. He again knows that if he increases his profit, that means he has to increase the price of his product, and he knows that if he increases the price of product, the demand for it will fall down. So again, what he will do, in order to maximize the profit, he will cut down on his cost. So previously he was selling the mobile phone at 150, he will again sell that at 150, but in that phone that was being produced by say 10 laborers, now he will only keep 7 laborers in the economy in his factory, and he will pay only 7 laborers, so that his profit is maximized. That means his cost is cut down. So these three examples, cost push, demand push, and structural bottlenecks, these three are example of inflation. That is, what happened was, increase in price and fall in purchasing power of the money. Now when we finish all these things, we come down to your, what are the measures taken by the government what are the measures taken by the authorities rather to curb this kind of situation? I'll just rub it off. Yeah. So let's come down to here. Measures to tackle inflation. So there are two basic measures that are available with the authorities to curb a inflationary situation or a deflationary situation as well. Deflationary situation. So when I spoke to you about the inflation, that is rise in price and fall in purchasing power, the opposite of that is deflation. Okay. So now when we see measures taken by, so there are two measures basically, first taken by the government and another taken by the central bank of a country. Central bank. When the central bank of a country takes steps to curb the inflation or curb the recession, what are those policies called? Those policies are called as monetary policies. But when I'm talking to you about when government intervenes and try to curb the inflationary situation or any deflationary situation, we call it as fiscal policy. So now, as you can see here, I've written the meaning: control spending and revenue collection of the government. And in monetary policy, I've written it down: flow of money is controlled. So basically, you know what is the role of government? The role of the government is basically to, to develop the economy, for the growth of economy, as well as to control the inflationary situation. But when we are talking about the RBI main focus is only on controlling the money supply in the economy. So what happened was, since we are focusing on this part only now, so RBI, what it does, it controls the money supply. Secondly, as you can see, controlled by RBI, and I've written it down, controlled by fiscal policy written by government, just to show you an example. Next is your tools available. So tools available with the government for for imposing fiscal policies. Those are budgetary tools, jaise ki taxation ho gaya and government spending ho gaya. We'll come to that. Next is your monetary policy tools are very important. Those are called interest rates, like repos, reverse repos, CRR, SLR, and OMO. We'll get back to this when we see in our next slide. It's already there. I'll show it to you. So I'll just rub this off and I'll give you a basic definition of what is monetary policy. Just a minute. So monetary policy, if you want to write down, it's nothing but a regulatory tool. Regulatory tool available with the RBI to ensure price stabilization, economic growth. So these are the aims. Okay, I'm writing about the aims here: economic growth and achieve highest employment level. Employment maximization करने की बात करता है ये. Next, when we see now, so we have covered all these things. Now I'll get into the details, but as of now we focus mainly on what is contractionary monetary policy and what is your expansionary monetary policy. So you'll be able to get a better understanding of what monetary policy actually talks about and why I spoke to you about the inflation. So once you understand that, we can move on to our tools, because tools are very easy to understand. Those are very basic tools. It won't take much time to to explain those tools, but the concept of monetary policy was important, so I started with the inflation and all. So let's see monetary policy. When we are talking about monetary policy, there are basically two kinds. One is your expansionary monetary policy. So what do you understand by expansionary? Expansionary means expanding the money supply in the economy. Why expanding the money supply? What happened was, when there is greater money supply, as I told you, when there was a rise in population or rise in income, when there is greater money supply, what happened was, people demand, so I'll write it here. So when there was greater money supply, what happened? People had more money in their hands, so that means their demand was higher. Their demand for particular commodity was higher, and when they were demanding more and more of a particular commodity, what happened was, it led to increase in price of the commodity. Price increase ho gaya, and when the price increased, what happened was, it led to again inflation and fall in purchasing power of the particular person. So ज़्यादा money supply लोगों के पास है, उसको curtail करने के लिए monetary policies are used. Now there are two steps again, one is contractionary and one is expansionary. When I'm talking about expansionary monetary policy, it talks about increasing the money supply. And why is going to take place? It is going to take place because there is a recession in the economy. Recession as in, there is lack of demand. there is lack of demand in the economy. Why there is lack of demand? Because people are not willing to buy more products. Then when people are not buying products, उससे हो क्या रहा है कि आपकी इकोनॉमी की जो ग्रोथ है, जो जीडीपी जिसको हम लोग बोलते हैं, वो गिर रही है, वो नीचे जा रही है. So what happened was, to increase the money, to increase the, to bring a country out of recession, expansionary monetary policy are taken up. In expansionary monetary policy, what happens was, the interest rate. So before coming to interest rate, I know you know about this thing called a bank. So what are the primary functions of a bank? First is to take deposit. And second is to give out loans. So you know that when the bank take deposit, it gives interest to the people who have deposited their money. Along with that, when banks, give loans, in order to make money, what does the bank do? It takes interest on these loans. So you guys tell me, when the interest rates are higher on the loans, will the people will be willing to take more? Will the people will be taking more loans, or they'll be taking less loans? Obviously, the people would be taking less loan, because the interest rate, say previously, if you take 1,000 rupees loan, and the rate of interest on that was, say, 5%. Now, because the government is using, say, contractionary monetary policy, so government increased the interest rate to 10. Now, obviously, these loans have become more expensive, and when things are more expensive, when the prices are higher, people are reluctant to take loans. So basically, when I'm talking about this type of expansionary and contractionary monetary policy, the interest rate I'm talking about is the bank interest rate. We'll come to that when we go to our next PDF, where we focus on what are the different tools available at the disposal with the government. So interest rate decreases because there is expansionary monetary policy. Why? Because interest rate increased. Interest is decreased. Yeah, expansionary monetary policy to increase the money supply. So interest rate kam kar diya. Now what happened was, the loans becomes cheaper. Now as the loans become cheaper, what will happen? More and more people will be taking up loans. Now more and more people taking up loans, what will happen? Money supply in the economy would increase. When the money supply in the economy would increase, what would happen? The demand for goods and commodity would again increase, and as the demand increases, the price of the product will also increase, and as a result, the country would come out of the recession and be at an equilibrium position. Same goes for the contractionary monetary policy. When we talk about this, in this kind of situation, there is an inflation in the economy, the inflation we spoke about, and in order to curb this kind of situation, what the government will do, or what the RBI would do, RBI would increase the interest rate on the loans. As a result, what happens? Loans become expensive, less people willing to take loans, less people taking loans. When less people taking loans, what will happen? Money supply, overall money supply in the economy decreases, and when the overall money supply in the economy decreases, what will happen? The demand would come down, and as a result, price of the commodity would also come down. So when I was talking to you about the definition of inflation, inflation is nothing but increase in price and fall in purchasing power. तो यहाँ पे क्या हो गया? Price कम हो गया, तो as a result आपका क्या हो गया? Purchasing power भी आपकी बढ़ गई आपके रुपए की. Very simple, very easy. So these three things you have to know. Now we see few of the questions, some of the tools available at the disposal with the RBI. We'll come to that in details. We'll focus on each of the things in detail. But now let's focus on what are the monetary policy tools. So there are two types of tools. I will not be focusing much on that. So qualitative tools as well as quantitative tools. Talking about a broader perspective, I'll just increase the size. So broadly speaking, what these tools help us in? These helps to decrease or increase the interest rate. And when these, except other than this, ये आपका OMO को छोड़ के ये आपके interest rates के ऊपर, बैंक के interest rates के ऊपर focus करता है और बैंक की reserves के ऊपर focus करता है. CRR, SLR अलग अलग चीजें हैं, but majorly these things focuses on the interest rates on the loans given by the banks. When these are decreased, what happened was, when the interest rate decreases, the loans become cheaper, and what happened was, when loans become more and more people demand loan, the demand for loans increases, and when the demand for loan increases, the money supply with them increases. When the money supply increases, again what happens? The demand for general goods and commodities rise because they are able to spend more now. And when the demand increases, interest rate कम कब किया जाता है? When there is a kind of recession in the economy. Recession, या फिर आप बोल सकते हो, I'll write it here, expansionary monetary policy जब अपनाई जा रही है, expansionary monetary policy, okay? Contractionary monetary policy किसको टारगेट करती है? इन्फ्लेशन को, एंड एक्सपेंशनरी टारगेट करती है रिसेशन को. नाउ आपको बेसिक चीजें अब यहां से आपको क्लियर हो गई होंगी. नाउ वील बी नॉट बी फोकसिंग ऑन टूल्स, बट व्हाट वी विल डू इज वी विल सी सम ऑफ द फ्यू प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चंस दैट विल हेल्प यू टू अंडरस्टैंड अभी तक आपने जितना पढ़ा है वो कितना आपको आता है. बिकॉज यूपीएससी व्हाट इट डज, इट आस्क्स क्वेश्चन बेस्ड ऑन योर एप्लीकेशन. Just studying things won't help you. We have to study things according to the demand of the paper. So when I'm talking about this, when we have discussed so much about monetary policy, inflation, and all those things. So let's focus on some of the previous year questions that were asked in UPSC to know how much you know about, how much you learned about this thing, this concept. So I'll just increase the size. Yeah, I hope you can see this. I hope you can see this. So we will not be focusing on the first question. First question is a, it's a technical question. आपके factual चीजों के ऊपर पूछा गया है. We will be focusing on main concept question. तो with ये 2021 में ये question was asked in UPSC prelims. So you can understand. अभी तक अपन ने जितना पढ़ा, you'll see how easily you'll be able to answer this question. So with reference to the Indian economy, demand pull inflation can be caused increase by which of the following. तो यहाँ पूछा गया है demand pull inflation किस वजह से होता है? Can be caused or increased. किस वजह से demand pull inflation होता है? So I'll just increase the size a bit more. I hope this is clear. I hope this is clear now. So as you can see, the options given here is that expansionary policies, fiscal stimulus, inflation, indexation and wages, हायर परचेजिंग पावर एंड राइजिंग इंटरेस्ट रेट. तो यहां पूछा जा रहा है डिमांड पुल इन्फ्लेशन क्यों कॉज होगा? डिमांड पुल इन्फ्लेशन के हम लोग पास दोबारा जाता है. डिमांड पुल इन्फ्लेशन क्यों होता है? फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, एग्रीगेट डिमांड ज्यादा है एज कंपेयर टू एग्रीगेट सप्लाई. एग्रीगेट डिमांड ज्यादा क्यों है? क्योंकि मनी सप्लाई या मनी एट द डिस्पोजल ऑफ द पीपल वो ज्यादा है. अब मनी सप्लाई क्यों ज्यादा है? क्योंकि आपका बैंक्स का इंटरेस्ट रेट कम कर रखा है सरकार ने, ताकि ज्यादा और ज्यादा से ज्यादा लोग आके ये पैसा उठा सके बैंक से. सो एज यू कैन सी, जो आपका पहला क्वेश्चन है, पहला ऑप्शन है एक्सपेंशनरी पॉलिसीज. सो जब आप देखते हो एक्सपेंशनरी पॉलिसीज में क्या किया गया है, व्हेन आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट एक्सपेंशनरी पॉलिसीज, व्हाट हैपेन इज, एक्सपेंशनरी पॉलिसी में इंक्रीज मनी सप्लाई, और इसमें क्या करोगे आप? इंटरेस्ट रेट्स को कम ही रखोगे. तो वी कैन से दैट दिस ऑप्शन इज करेक्ट. सो जहां आपका फर्स्ट करेक्ट हो गया, तो सपोज बी में नहीं है तो बी को आप स्ट्राइक ऑफ कर दीजिए. नाउ लेट्स कम डाउन टू राइजिंग इंटरेस्ट रेट. फिफ्थ में आई विल फोकस ऑन ऑल द थिंग्स, बट लेट्स सी, अभी हम लोग एक बार फिफ्थ में आ जाते हैं. यहां वो एक्सपेंशनरी की पॉलिसीज की बात कर रहा है, जहां हम लोग ने बात करी इंटरेस्ट रेट कम करने की. बट व्हेन वी आर कमिंग डाउन टू द फिफ्थ पॉइंट, इट टॉक्स अबाउट राइजिंग इंटरेस्ट रेट, की इंटरेस्ट रेट बढ़ा दिया. अब लॉजिकल सी बात है, अगर इफ इंटरेस्ट रेट इज इंक्रीज, व्हाट विल हैपन? द लोन्स विल बिकम एक्सपेंसिव, एंड एज लोन्स विल बिकम एक्सपेंसिव, पीपल विल स्टॉप टेकिंग मोर लोन्स. As a result, what will happen? Demand will fall down. So it won't lead to demand pull inflation. तो जहां आपने फिफ्थ ऑप्शन देखा, राइजिंग इन इंटरेस्ट रेट नहीं होगा, इट विल बी फॉलिंग इंटरेस्ट रेट. सो जहां 5 को स्ट्राइक ऑफ कर सकते हो. सो योर आंसर इज 1, 2 and 4. 3 भी नहीं है. So I'll be focusing on all these things when we study about fiscal policies, fiscal stimulus, inflation indexing wages. We'll come to that, but as of now, I just wanted to show you this, that whatever we have studied now, till now, how easily you were able to answer this kind of question. Same और एक देख लेते हैं. Which of the following steps is most likely to be taken on the economic recession? तो suppose recession हो रहा है, तो क्या step लिया जाएगा गवर्नमेंट के द्वारा तो इसको कम कर सके? So as you can see, recession means देयर इज लेस डिमांड फॉर पर्टिकुलर कमोडिटीज, तो डिमांड कम है, एग्रीगेट सप्लाई ज्यादा है बट डिमांड इज लेस, तो अब डिमांड को बढ़ाना है, तो डिमांड को बढ़ाने के लिए सेम आपको क्या करना पड़ेगा, इंटरेस्ट रेट्स को कम करना पड़ेगा। इकोनॉमिक रिसेशन में क्या है, डिमांड फॉर पर्टिकुलर कमोडिटीज कम है कि नहीं, जब आपको डिमांड बढ़ाना है तो डिमांड बढ़ाने के लिए क्या करना पड़ेगा, अगेन आपको इंटरेस्ट रेट्स को कम करना पड़ेगा ताकि लोन्स बिकम मोर चीपर एंड पीपल कैन बाय गो एंड बाय मोर एंड मोर ऑफ प्रोडक्ट। सो एज यू कैन सी कट इन टैक्स रेट अकम्पनीड बाय इंक्रीज, तो अगेन यहाँ पे इंक्रीज आ गया, नेवर इंक्रीज, इट्स ऑलवेज डिक्रीज। सो फर्स्ट इज योर ऑप्शन इज करेक्ट, रॉन्ग। Increase in expenditure on public projects, okay, we'll keep that aside. Then we come down to the third, increase in tax rates accompanied by reduction, तो यहाँ पे आप टैक्स को इंक्रीज कर रहे हो, दैट मीन्स आप लोगों की जो जमा पूंजी है, इनकम है, आप उसको कम करने की कोशिश कर रहे हो, और जहां आप उसको कम करने की कोशिश कर रहे हो उससे हो क्या रहा है कि लोग बाग के पास परचेजिंग पावर उनकी दोबारा कम कर रही है और उनकी फिर डिमांड दोबारा गिर रही है, डिमांड अगेन। तो ये आप फर्स्ट स्टेप रॉन्ग है, सेकेंड फिर भी इट्स करेक्ट, बट अगर ये सिर्फ रिडक्शन इन इंटरेस्ट रेट होता वी कुड हैव कंसिडर्ड दिस करेक्ट, बट बिकॉज देयर इज इंक्रीज इन टैक्स रेट की बात करेंगे तो दिस इज अगेन रॉन्ग। थर्ड, लास्ट बट नॉट द लीस्ट, रिडक्शन इन एक्सपेंडिचर ऑन पब्लिक प्रोजेक्ट्स। अब पब्लिक प्रोजेक्ट्स क्या होते हैं, से फॉर एग्जांपल गवर्नमेंट ब्रिज बनाती है या गवर्नमेंट रोड्स बनाती है। नाउ एज यू नो व्हेन गवर्नमेंट रोड्स बनाती है, गवर्नमेंट क्या करती है, एम्प्लॉयमेंट प्रोवाइड करिए लोगों को, एंड क्योंकि लोगों को एम्प्लॉयमेंट प्रोवाइड करिए, एज अ रिजल्ट व्हाट हैपेंड वाज more and more people are getting employed, and when more and more people are getting employed, what is happening is they are getting money for the service they are provided, and as they have more money in their hands, their demand would also increase for products, and when the demand would increase, what will happen is the price will again go back to its normal position. So whenever the government invests in the government project, what happens is the employment level rises, and when the employment level rises, the money supply with the people again increases. So when I'm talking about a situation of recession, so in this situation what the government does is it tries to increase the expenditure on public projects, and as a result what happens is people get more employment opportunities, they have more money in their hands, and as a result the demand is again brought back, their demand again rises and prices are increased, and then it is brought to an equilibrium level, and the country is taken out of the recession. So I hope this is clear. इतना ही था basics हम लोग का, and when we continue in our next class we will see what are the different tools available at the disposal of the RBI. So till then, thank you.